Slightly louder. Good evening. Good evening. Wonderful. Great start of the evening. Thank you everybody for coming. It's really wonderful that we are all assembled here to talk about something that touches everybody's hearts. This is the SME Roundtable of Business Today. It is presented by Reliance Commercial Finance. So this roundtable actually is a lead up to the Best SME Awards that Business Today conducts annually. And this year too we have one coming up in September. Today's topic is a very interesting one. How cloud and SaaS technologies are leveling the playing field between SMEs and big companies. It's a theory that a lot of people believe in and some people don't. So it makes always for an engaging debate. First, I'd like to call on stage my good friend and today's moderator, Venkatesha. Venkatesha Babu, Deputy Editor of Business Today. Can we have some applause? Then we start with the panel. First, may I call on Mr. Goenka, Mr. Bharat Goenka, co-founder and managing director of Tally Solutions. Next, may I call on Dr. Koppar, Dr. Anand Koppar, Chairman and CEO of KC Technologies. Next, may I call on Mr. Meligri, Mr. Arvind Meligri, Chairman and CEO of Acus. Then may I call on Rajesh Jaftiani, the CEO of Think7. And last but not the least, Mr. Vivek Kulkarni of Brickwork India. Can we have a better applause? Mr. Kulkarni is the founder and chairman of Brickwork India. So that's our panel for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Can we have a good round of applause before we start? Thank you very much. Venkatesha, over to you.
Thank you for those introductions, Alokesh. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking time to be with us on a lovely Friday evening. I know that the traffic must have been bad, but I appreciate you guys to joining us on this occasion. This is a topic fairly close to my heart. As my colleague pointed out, I've had the privilege of tracking the technology sector for a fairly long period of time. And some of the gentlemen sitting next to me, probably for a couple of decades. I've seen them in wearing multiple hats in various roles, and it's good to have them on this panel today. While a lot of attention is focused on the large brand name companies, it's the small and medium enterprises which are actually the heart of the country. These are the companies which actually thrive, and these are the stars of tomorrow. Earlier, SMEs used to have a huge handicap in competing with large companies. The contention is that today, because of the emergence of cloud and software as a service, a lot of those handicaps have disappeared. What I want to do is probably start off by asking my panelists to express their thoughts, probably for 2 to 3 minutes initially on the topic, and we will have a fairly freewheeling discussion. I'll start off with probably, as Alokesh rightly pointed out, the father of the Indian software product industry. I remember speaking to Mr. Goenka more than a decade back. Tally was in a different avatar then, not so evolved as it is today. I remember a quote of his which stuck in my mind. He said, Venkatesh, there are just 2 kinds of people out there. Those who use Tally and those who will use Tally. With that introduction of Mr. Goenka, he doesn't need an introduction nonetheless. Could you please share your thoughts?
You introduced the subject with a very specific statement that with the advent of cloud and SaaS, is the playing field getting more level? I want to break the problem up into two parts. So there's one part of SMEs which are capital intensive, and or other businesses which are capital intensive, and where businesses are capital intensive and the cost of IT is only a small fraction of the total capital, per se it will have only that fraction of an impact. Then there are parts of businesses which are enabled through IT, and where potentially access to IT rather than the cost of IT, will that improve the ability of an SME to grow faster than it would earlier have grown. So in some ways, each of us have already felt that impact, that when you take email as a leveling playing field to improve communication between people, and all of us now just take it for granted, when perhaps several years ago, only the larger companies could afford this effective or efficient communication. And email therefore has changed the game. Now in per se, is it really a cloud versus non-cloud statement? It's not that. So people accuse me of not being cloud friendly, and that's largely because we have a farmer here with us, but as a farmland owner, and I've always believed that when the cloud comes, it just hides the sunlight, and unless it rains, the cloud doesn't help. So you require sunlight or you require rain, not really cloud. So taking an application from a desktop to the cloud is not going to change anything. And in the long run, it will add cost to every single person. It is not about cloud, it is about the fact that you've got ubiquitous connectivity. And can you create connected solutions? How do SMEs connect to each other, connect to their suppliers, connect to their customers, connect to lending sources, connect to banks for transactions and payments? So connectivity per se is going to become the most important leveler. And some of those leveling advantages will reside in the cloud, some of them will reside in their offices, and some of them will reside in the devices. And it is the fact that you can connect everything to each other which has the potential of being the game changer. So,
Arvind, I want to come in here. Arvind brings a fairly unique perspective. He is again somebody whom I have watched seeing evolve over a period of time. He actually wears two different hats. One, he is the co-founder of Quest Engineering Services, which is a $400 million in revenue, 7,000 employee kind of a company. He also brings in other fairly unique and interesting perspective in the sense that his company, Acres, of which he is also a founder, it actually manufactures, it's in the manufacturing domain. It manufactures actually door frames, windows for the likes of Airbus, Boeing. So he brings a fairly unique perspective. Arvind, your take on the topic today?
Yeah, it's, I had to wind back into my early stages of Quest when we started as a two-people company in US, and how challenging was it for us to, on the IT side. The first day, we ended up spending $45,000 to buy a software, a desktop, an SGI Silicon Graphics machine, spent $20,000 out of our credit cards. So there is no way, today if you were to do that today, most probably you can do that on the cloud. You don't need to really own such a high powerful computer yourself, but it could be available through Amazon, cloud service, whatever that, computing service, AWS, whatever they call, and software could be leased hour basis. So that actually brings the barrier down in my view. And also the challenges we had even set up email, servers, especially when we have operation global basis, US, India. So we need to have multiple locations and time zones we need to deal with. Compared to what it is today, it's when we started ACUS, we spun off ACUS, which is Quest Manufacturing, it just took us a day to call Microsoft, say we're going to go on 365, and we had 700 people transition overnight. And now I don't need to worry, we have a global operation. I don't need to worry about what it is out there. So I think it is definitely makes it easy for not only just on the desktop or just cloud, but also when we're looking at globalization, companies are trying to go global, what kind of global infrastructure you want to build. Do we have capacity, ability to build as SME? That's the question also we need to ask. That brings a different perspective, because you mentioned about capital cost, and I remember in 2004, 2005, Quest was 700 people. At that time, our revenue was $20 million. I remember about $10 million was a fixed asset. Out of that, 90% was software. You know? And imagine how can you put that kind of a cost structure in a company and still able to do that. We could have done easily much better. My growth would have been better if we had been able to lease the software by hour or whatever it is. Today in aerospace industry, it happens, airlines, powered by the hour. You pay what you use. Those things are yet to come, but there also has barriers in terms of there is no, today softwares are sold on geographic pricing. All that stuff will go away. When you do this cloud-based SaaS type of applications, you can't have that. So really they need to think through how they are going to transition into this cloud, and also that barrier can come down, but also whether they are proactively willing to do it or not on a global basis.
Thank you. Mr. Kulkarni requires very little introduction. Nonetheless, let me quickly state, if today Karnataka is at the forefront of the IT industry in the country, it's thanks to forward-looking bureaucrats like Mr. Kulkarni. Vivek played a very key role in ensuring policy-friendly environment which helped Karnataka get that kind of a head start. He also has a second distinction, one of the very few bureaucrats who actually made the transition to the private sector, very successfully runs a ratings company now. Vivek, you have seen help to foster SME companies. How do you see this kind of challenge, whether cloud and SaaS are actually on the ground helping level playing field?
Thank you, Venkatesh, for a good introduction. Actually, Arvind and I are from the same school in Hubli, so my answer will be a little similar for the same question. I think I agree with him. When we used to buy a computer, of course he put it in big dollars, but let's say we used to pay about 32,000 rupees. I'm talking of 2002 or so, a desktop. Out of that, 18,000 rupees was for the software, our Microsoft software. And whatever software we take, we all know, like if Excel is there, maybe except adding, multiplying, or occasionally a couple of other functions, I don't think we use really more than 5% of the functions which it gives. Same with the PowerPoint, same with the Word. We just know, even now I think I just use it, what I would do in email, I would do in Word. So I think even though these features are not required, we are paying for it. And secondly, every 3 years they come and change the software version. So you once again have to upgrade and again pay for it. And then there are many other, then you require a server, like if you want an Exchange server, then there is yet another license. And for that you pay. And a lot of junk mail goes through. So for that you buy yet another software to avoid that junk mail. Otherwise you spend a lot of time just looking at the junk mail. So I think this is where, when we, right now, if you want it on a bigger scale, all this is available on the cloud. And if you wanted a big time software, like you are writing a program, statistical, like for example, we develop a program for SMEs where we look at a lot of financial ratios and we'll try to find out whether this SME is good or not. So for that it requires some intensive calculations, simulations, etc. Then I had to buy really a big computing power, and that's really beyond the scope of a small company. So right now, earlier the bigger companies used to have bigger computers. IBM used to say, I have a supercomputer. Intel also, all these people built huge computers, and we only used to read about it. But right now I would say a huge computer may be kept in the size, like the size of a football field in Oregon. That kind of data centers are also your computers right now. So in case you want that kind of computing power, it's available to you for any small company. And as an example, I thought I will give that Airbnb. Airbnb just started, I think, 6 years ago. and you want to book a hotel room, you invariably use that Airbnb nowadays. It gets you really good prices. Its valuation right now is $20 billion. It's entirely using the data center of Amazon. So I think there are countless examples both there and India, but I think to start with, I think the level playing field has already started. Right now, a small or a big company, any small company can challenge a big company if they feel like. Thank you.
Rajesh is a newish entrepreneur veteran. Let me explain what I mean by that. In spite of his extreme youthful looks, he has spent actually a couple of decades in the industry. When Alokesh said he was the youngest, probably that's true, but he has spent a couple of decades in the industry. His company, Think7, is just 9 months old, but he brings again a kind of a different perspective because his family runs a very successful auto component manufacturing company too. In fact, whenever Think7 puts out some software, the dog food is eaten internally before it's pushed out to customers. Your perspective on how this works, having been an SME yourself and have scaled over a period of years, Rajesh.
Thank you for the introduction, Venkatesh. Nice to be here. I think I don't know whether I'm young or old, but I've been having very interesting discussions with, in fact, today morning with my mother-in-law as a preparation for this. I said, what is the cloud? And the only cloud she had heard was iCloud, thanks to the iPhone. Right? Overall, I think this topic is extremely relevant today because, firstly, India is not a level playing field. I mean, we saw that while coming here. It's not a level playing field. If I was looking at a report, recipe to an automotive company is not going to fly. And even in automotive, if you're going to go to a made to stock and give the same solution, it's not going to fly. So I think the key is I think monetization wise, there's no issue. Monetization wise, cloud is already there. The Amazon services are very cheap and they're very stable. Security wise, I think just to highlight on the security a bit, it's, we did an analysis that if your server is connected to the internet and you are accessing that server from somewhere, the chances and the probability of someone being able to hack into it is the same. In fact, Amazon or Microsoft or others, the kind of security they have done on their servers is huge. So I think security, in my view, is not something which, and their security is well taken care of.
You say security is a red herring. Would you agree with that, Mr. Kulkarni? Because one of the big concerns for SMEs is they wouldn't have trained manpower enough to address the security challenge at all. But Rajesh seems to be confident that the back-end service providers, the infrastructure service providers are so robust enough, that's not a concern. But a lot of SMEs tend to flag that.
No, actually, see, the biggest advantage of the cloud is it takes away the fixed cost and makes it operating cost. There's no fixed cost. And usually when you don't have a fixed cost, rating agencies will give you a higher rating. That is But the security, I don't know whether people know of a website called Ashley Madison.
So I'm not a member. I'm sure that a lot of people in this room are aware of what
Even though he's not a member, he knows about the site. The moderator is aware of it very well. So I think just for those who are not aware, Ashley Madison is a site for all adults for online cheating. So the tagline in the website is, life is short, have an affair. So the website is persuading you to have an affair with someone else, like extramarital affair. And of course it is based in Canada, but it has the websites everywhere. And a week ago, and also in fact this website also published saying that, okay, you already started having an affair and you paid it using your credit card. So your credit card, your name, everything is there inside the database. is also using the cloud, by the way. Now the question is, you felt now you need to close it and let's, forget about it. So the website was advertising, if you pay $190, your entire details will be erased. So a lot of people paid $190 to erase their web details. But one hacker has hacked 1 million record of Australians and has put it on the website, including the people who had paid this $190. So I think the privacy and the security issue is the most crucial problem with the cloud, the most crucial, because particularly for the intellectual property kind of thing. Because now for our models, I don't want a Chinese rating agency to take a look at what we have done. So I think that's very, very crucial. And obviously the companies will hesitate before they, like any large bank will never use a public cloud. All of them will use a private cloud. But as an SME, we don't have money to use a private cloud. So we have to have, if somebody invents, like Mr. Bharat Goenka who keeps inventing, at the cost of the public cloud, if he gives us the privacy, that will be fantastic.
Rajesh, would you like to respond to that? How do you address those kind of challenges? He has clearly demolished the argument of,
So I'll tell you,
public cloud service providers being secure enough, safe enough.
I think he said that public cloud is safe.
How did those 1 million accounts get hacked?
Yes,
All those details out there.
Okay, so I have a question to ask the audience. So we all use email, right? We trust it. It's on a public cloud. We all use Dropbox. We trust it. Do you know where Dropbox is? Do you know the name of the company? Is it Dropbox? No, right? Does anybody know the name of the company? You don't. But you all use Dropbox. So we trust it. Why do we trust it? Because it's Dropbox. The point is, we already are on the cloud. On our email. We send our financial documents on email. Right? That time we don't think, right? But when it comes to business, we suddenly say, how can we put data from our servers onto the cloud? But your financial statements, everything is already on the cloud. So I think it's more of a mindset. The key for SMEs, what I feel, really is that SMEs don't have the time. And the money is, and the resources are really, really scarce. Right? So we work with lots of SMEs. Initially in the discussion, it's more about, making sure that that trust happens. And trust only happens once they see that, the person who's coming to them is connecting to their problem and really, really connecting to their problem and has a solution. What tends to happen is I used to work for companies like SAP. I had solutions like an HR solution which was across industries. HR solution across industries works. But what I feel really is required, we talk about made in India, right? But our focus is still global. What I really feel is required is make for India. We cannot take a global solution, and that's what Bharat did. Very innovatively came out with Tally, which works for India. So that make for India, and it's a product mindset. So for example, I'll just take, for example, since I'm responding to him, so please give me a little more time. Yeah. For example, one of our customers, sorry, I missed the thought process over there. So
basically, you're responding to Vivek's point on how it is.
So make for India. So for example, you cannot take a solution. So there are a lot of global things we can utilize. For example, a product. So one of my customers was telling me he bought an ERP, and he's an SME, around 50, 60 crores turnover. He bought a ERP for around 7-8 lakhs, which is not a small amount. So 7 to 8 lakhs is a big amount for an SME. And on top of that, when he had an issue with the software, the person was his vendor was in a services mindset. So when the bugs happened, he actually gave him a quote for the bugs for 2 lakhs. Right? Now I see that as a services mindset. The product mindset would have been that, bugs have happened. It's actually, firstly, my customer should not be testing bugs, but still, you can't catch every bug on the planet. And if a customer, by chance, it goes to the customer, then after that, I'm fixing it, my product is improving. That's a product mindset. That's what I think Tally is doing. It's a product mindset. In a services mindset, you charge for everything. I put 2 days of resources, so I'm going to charge the customer. That's where you lost the trust of the customer. So I think the bigger issue is mindset and is trust. Once established, cloud actually comes as a discussion. They know our solutions are cloud, but it actually comes towards the end. And as I said, most of our customers are on the cloud. So,
Dr. Koppar, given the limited ability of a large number of SMEs in terms of their investment abilities, in terms of their ability to deploy manpower for implementation, given all the limitations, but given all the advantages which cloud and SaaS brings, do they inevitably stumble into cloud and SaaS environment? As a vendor and as a veteran of the services industry, what's been your own experience, and how can they ensure that SMEs can ensure that they don't make those kind of mistakes? That it's a well thought out process when they actually move to this kind of models.
Actually, one of the things most of the SMEs start doing when they want to do something in the IT is they have a very small budget for IT, and they don't do much of the strategization of what they need and how they have to implement that. Unfortunately, there are people who are friends, relatives, who will have something of their interest, and then they'll start pushing that kind of a software or hardware into their companies. In most of the cases I have seen this. If I go to a SME client and ask him, why did you choose this? He said, my friend said, or my son-in-law said this, or my father-in-law gave me this. So without even doing some of the activities, they plunge into this, and then there is a mess out of it. And it's very difficult for them to come out of that mess. That's why when I was giving my opening remarks, I was telling that the cloud and the technologies have got a leveling field. Now we don't trust any of the suggestions which we get from others. We also want to see what is happening on the net and see if there is anything in advertisement which has come for this, which again, without having a proper IT strategist, it would be very difficult for that person to make sure what he wants. So ultimately, I believe that there has to be a good planning. Then only we will be able to take advantage of the technologies which are available in the market. If there is no planning, then obviously people who come to us as experts, people would have burnt their fingers quite a few times before they actually come onto the right software or right IT infrastructure in their organization. So I think there is a need for more and more knowledge sharing among the SMEs. And then say, this is the experiment which I have done, and you can go ahead with this. But as Mr. Bharat Goenka told, that if there is a SME which is very capital intensive, the amount of money which they spend on IT is negligible, and they can afford to have their own kind of systems inside. But if it is a SME which is more service oriented and doesn't have much of the assets, then it may be better to go for the cloud and have instead of a fixed asset, recurring asset.
Before I throw the floor open to the audience, Arvind, do you think without cloud and SaaS being there, somebody like Aegis having set up in a place like Belgaum, incidentally SCG is in Belgaum, Arvind requires credit on multiple fronts. Even his first company was started in a tier 2 city like Hubli. He incubated it in the US, but large part of it eventually happened, a lot of action happened in Hubli before, of course, being now a global player. Arvind, would this have been possible without the cloud and SaaS being there? would you be able to compete in the global aerospace business with the best of the best without having this level playing field, being a relatively smaller player?
Since Mr. Copper brought, I'll answer that question. Just before that, Mr. Copper brought this point of capital, highly capital intensive. It's more than a capital intensive or non-capital intensive business. It is, from my view, what is core or non-core. If your business, the IT is non-core, it's an essential piece. I don't want to worry about how it happens. It's definitely cost is a factor, but still I don't want to be worried about how it gets done. My mails, my data management, my backups, or ERPs, I would like to just be taken care. Especially, although we can afford to invest on that capital, but issue of being uptime, especially on a global basis, is the biggest challenge. So if the cloud guys can provide, or SaaS people can provide this peace of mind, the way our machine manufacturers say, I'm going to put 4 maintenance people so that your machine is going to be up to a 99.9% assurance. We need to have that kind of assurance on some of these non-core activities. And that's a key for us to move on to, and focus on our core activities, which is producing parts. Okay? So that's where more of a distinction between core and non, whether it's a high capital cost or low capital cost, more of a core or non-core. If that is a core business, then they may be able to invest IT people and everything and do that, but in being a manufacturing business, we just don't want to be bothered about it. That's the way we look at it. Now, coming back to your question, Venkatesh, the Belgium or Paris, Texas, where we have other operations, the challenges are exactly the same. We just did an acquisition in US, a aerospace manufacturing company, a place called Paris, Texas, about a 2-hour drive from Dallas. And you wouldn't believe there is only one internet service provider in the whole town of 80,000 people. Okay? And the service is pathetic. This is in US, by the way. And it's no different was in Belgium when we started in 2009, 2007, and really had to go and ask Reliance and Airtel guys really, and BSNL, to draw a fiber line and connect it, because without that we couldn't do anything. Forget about SaaS, we couldn't even get our emails in and out. So the challenges are similar, in certain level of cities and certain where this thing is. And IT side, when we started in 2007, 2009, we had nothing on cloud. Okay, we had nothing. Today, if you look at all our emails and everything is on Office 365 we use, and that goes on, and our ERP is on the cloud, and globally we're connected through VPN, and data moves back and forth. And with a Microsoft new solution of 50 gigabyte per user on the 365, we don't really worry about data, where it sits. And obviously, with the infrastructure we have put in, we could have put hardware, and we could have put all sorts of rates and everything we would have managed historically the way we have managed in Quest. But also now we are seeing some challenges with even like cloud. We have export control data in our system, which US supplier, US employees cannot really send it to, outside US. So we don't know where this cloud sits. So we can be violating this rules of US, and without knowing where this cloud is sitting, we're asking them to define where the cloud is, so that depending on that, we can say whether it will compliant or not. So some of these additional challenges are coming. So if we had an email server in US, we would have said it's a US based, nothing doing. But now we don't know where this cloud is sitting.
While the field has been leveled to a little bit extent, it seems like newer crop of challenges are coming up. Why don't we throw this open to the audience? I have a small request before, please put up your hand before you ask a question. And when the mic is passed on, introduce yourself and your organization before you ask the question, and to whom the question is address to. Thank you. Can we have somebody, does anybody have any questions for the panelists? Out there I see this gentleman over here. Excuse me. There is a gentleman over here. Would you introduce yourself and your organization, please? And hold the mic a little bit closer. You are not audible. It's not on.
Ashwin Saas from Jayanti. We are exporters of tea and spices, and we have global operations. Now, we basically have our own infrastructure as far as IT is concerned everywhere. But we do use the cloud, as you said, as Mr. Kulkarni mentioned about Dropbox or emails are being always going to the cloud side. The biggest problem that we face is connectivity, especially with our factories. And as Mr. Arvind said, that even today in most places is a bigger problem, even sometimes in Bangalore. For example, Cunningham Road was dug up and every email is not working for a few days. What do you do with that? So if you have whole office sitting, whole factory sitting with no work to do.
Given the challenges in connectivity, Mr. Goenka, is that the reason why you still continue to push for an on-premise model rather than a cloud kind of a model?
So, again, I'll just go back to what we have been doing for the last 3 years and which we will present in the coming 1 year. It is building on the statement. The premise has advantages, which is not dependent upon connectivity. Connectivity has advantages because you can access it from anywhere. Now, how do you build transactional systems which will operate offline and at the same time give you the advantages of being online when it is online? So when connectivity is not available in your office, doesn't mean that connectivity is not available to your salesman on the field, because that person has got a phone which is probably connected, but your office has a broadband which may have got disconnected because of a fiber cut. So if you build technologies which allow this hybrid existence, you get all the advantages of the premise and all the advantages of the cloud. And then it comes back to that, is that sensible enough for a vendor to build, and how will they monetize it, because building such environments don't
obviously
have
costs
involved, and then you have the reverse challenge, how do you make it affordable? So it's a cycle which requires to be ultimately solved, and technology allows you to solve the problem, but it just needs to be solved well.
Just because you flag this, yeah, sure.
Very recently, the Prime Minister inaugurated Digital India. So Digital India is a huge program of connectivity. It's very huge, and it's going to make the Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi is going to be free in Bangalore. Means so many vendors have to provide it in any case. And another important thing is Mr. Mukesh Ambani's company, Reliance Jio, has probably, like the market estimate says, has probably invested 100,000 crores of fiber optics. So it will be yet another vendor as far as we are concerned. Of course, Airtel and other companies need to a little bit worry, but as far as the consumers are concerned, we have yet another huge network, and that connectivity will make it, more easier, and probably, Mr. Goenka will also then introduce Tally on the cloud. But the issue is, actually the cloud is beneficial for a software company, because all of us, for example, if we have one software, the copies are given to other machines also. Suppose we have a one password for, let us say, capital line data, the same password is shared with another 5 colleagues also. So technically in India, 80%, the piracy rate is 80%. The global average piracy rate is 43%. India is 80%, because only 20% are legal softwares, 80% are not. So to that extent, this will bring so that all the softwares can be made legal. And that's a huge advantage for the product developers.
So a quick move to the cloud will increase your sales. That's the tip which Mr. Kulkarni is offering you.
Everything which is beneficial to the customer will increase the sales.
Sure.
Honestly.
Sure. Rajesh, on a much more broader perspective, this doesn't seem to be the way Arvind outlined this. Connectivity doesn't seem to be a, if I may use the politically incorrect term, not a third world problem alone. Even in America, if there are connectivity challenges, how do you do these issues crop up when you're trying to sell to SMEs? How do you reassure?
Of course they crop up. So yesterday we were at a customer place and they've been trying to get Airtel to give a better connectivity. So these issues definitely crop up. So these are real issues. In fact, in the area where my partner's factory is and a lot of our customers are, it's in Jigni. Actually, one of my customers wanted, his current connection was not working and there was a new 4G which had come up. And many times I think it's also awareness. So in the US, of course, I think everybody knows where the connectivity is and where it's not. In India, I think a lot of things are in the gray areas. So if you call a service provider, typically they themselves, we found out that one of the service providers did not know that in that area there was 4G. And actually there was 4G in that area. So we requested them, they did not know. We said, okay, we'll take it in Koramangala. And then we went and tried it in Jigni. And actually it worked beautifully. I'm using that right now. Then we called the call center and said, can you transfer this to Jigni? And they did it. They did. Then we gave it to a customer who tried it in Attibele, and it worked there also. So the point is, okay, so that's on the gray area. But I feel that, so this customer yesterday who we met, they actually working with one of the providers. And the provider actually agreed to put a tower above their building. What I feel is that since the benefits which Arvind mentioned is that you really, as an SME, you don't have the time to get into managing IT infrastructure. From a user perspective, as you mentioned, you want the user experience to be continuous. Every time there is a point of failure, the user experience drops. You don't want that to happen. So as long as you can focus on your business, it frees up more of your time. The IT side you want someone else to take care of. The cost advantages are huge. It's directly impacting your profits. There are lots of benefits. So as far as, I also feel that, if initiatives like the Digital India can get better, infrastructure. At the same time, even SMEs, actually the problems are the same. So if we have multiple customers on the same road, if they combine energies, they would have got the tower up even earlier. So it is possible to get connectivity is much better. In fact, today there are other solutions, sir, to answer your question. So for example, we've also investigated that, simple routers. You take a router which is 2,000 rupees. You can take two connections. One is a BSNL, one is another one. One fails, it automatically switches over. That's 2,000 rupees. If you take 5,000 rupees, if the quality of service on one drops, it switches to the other one. So these solutions are available today. It's actually awareness. A lot of people don't know about them. But there are options. So take two connections from two people. Two connections are available everywhere. So that's, I'm saying, okay, some places like maybe Pennsylvania, they're not. Yeah?
Then it turns out that the second service provider is using the other one's bandwidth.
Yeah, I don't know about the billing part, but sorry, I'm not an expert on that.
Okay, we have a gentleman over there at the back.
My name is Rahul Gupta. I run a small company called NX8 Network Security Solutions. I make in India, in Bangalore, network security appliances and secure connectivity appliances. So I have been listening to this connectivity and security problem, itching to say that I'm making those devices. I can give 3 internet connections to that. I don't want it to be called as router because I call it a network security appliance. And
That was free advertising. So what's the question, sir?
Okay. So the question part is that we have discussed all this while about this SME Saas and labeling field. The problem with the SME is that there is hardly any awareness even about what is SaaS, what is cloud, what kind of applications are available, and whether those applications will be useful for me or not. So, to me, the fundamental question is, where is the awareness to SME? Incidentally, I am also the chairman of MATE SME chapter. So, it is a very interesting subject for me. Thank you very much.
Dr. Popper, is it just a question of evangelization of what is available? Is it still in the educating kind of a phase of market growth? Is that the key challenge?
I think it's a process where when the generations change, there is more and more awareness. So some of us are from the older generation, so we may be talking against the SaaS and technologies. But as the younger generation takes over the corporations and the SMEs, there will be more and more awareness coming in there. The right thing is the awareness is low, and there are forums where people are trying to educate other people. But as the generation flows, there will be more and more awareness about this, and then people will start using these technologies very well. For example, many of your kids may be using the mobile much better than you are doing. So that way, there will be a substantial change, and that's what when I said the technologies are trying to make a level playing field, and that will definitely happen. But we need to keep an eye on the quality of service and the cost. There cannot be a compromise on both of these. And as things came out, we were doing with one line, one network connection. Now you are asking me to connect the second one. Somebody will come and ask me to connect the third one. Is it affordable? That is the question. So affordability and the quality of service will be the prime ones. And when I have a customer today, which is not on SaaS or technologies, I know what are his problems, because he will come and tell me. But on the net, if I have a customer, he won't tell me. He'll go to somebody else. So will I have the same kind of revenue models, fixed revenues coming from my clients? So there are examples where people are shifting. That's why we had to bring in the mobile number portability. Why it was required? If the provider provided me a proper service, I would not move from Airtel to Vodafone to something else. So I think that would be a bigger question, and most of the people today keep, at least the younger generation, keep themselves busy in finding out which is a good package or a better package, and then go on shifting. So people, rather than doing their work, maybe spending more time in doing these things. So that's why there is a cautious note that we need to understand what is required for us and how we can get it in the right manner.
Fair enough. We have a gentleman over here. Could you pass the mic there, please?
Good evening. My name is Krishna. We run a company called NV Dynamics, which is into noise and vibration engineering services, more into testing. My question was, or my concerns was around, is this obligatory or is it kind of organic requirement of a small company like ours that we need to move on to, like the gentleman said, do we have even a website in some of those SME companies? Or do we think that we can just use a Google account and keep transacting? But we move on, probably that's my feeling, that we move on with the requirement of the customer, that we move on to a web page of our own content. But when it comes to a cloud requirement, it was more essential requirement from the customer that a large amount of data was required on the other side of the globe or within India. And we were there at the place when Mahindra started developing the Scorpio platform. They said we want a lot of data generated on similar platforms elsewhere in the world. So we had no means other than sending a CD point across to them. But now we see that's a big advantage that we upload this to a cloud and they download it. But the big flip side, as analyst said, was the security problem. That this is my genuine earned intellectual property, but as a small company, I can't afford to have a private server or a private cloud space. That someday somebody will snatch it off and am I ruined completely? So the other small part of the question was the stability of the infrastructure itself. Like this gentleman was saying, whether one network works, the other one. The other one is, today I have moved over to cloud and I have no means of coming back to a burnt CD again. So I can't do a reversal of technology. I'm very much concerned there that this progression is good, this digital India is good, but do I have a path of coming back in case everything fails, like the IBM statement saying Abacus will be the best computer someday, any day probably. That's my question.
Thank you for the question. There are multiple strands, and I would like, Arvind, is it more of a pull factor rather than a push factor when it becomes inevitable for SMEs to make this transition?
It's actually driven by two things. One is the customers of the SMEs are driving a lot of time driving force, especially being an engineering service provider. I can relate to your needs, like product like LMS, which is one of the you might be using. It's $40,000-$50,000 seat, right? Maybe $60,000.
Incidentally, I worked for the company for a while.
So what I'm saying is, today you have to make sure you utilize 2,000 hours to get returns on that. You might need only 100 hours in a year you might need that product. Being on a Saas platform or a cloud platform, you may be able to power by the hour, take that 100 hours and actually maybe more cost effective. And also at the same time, you are running it on a cloud where the data is sitting there. It could be a private cloud of the OEM, which can be sharing the data of the vehicle model. You can run your analysis, sits there. There is no risk of you taking responsibility of the data, whether theft happened or not, because it's his private cloud. And he will take much more care for his IP versus you who have to worry about downloading the data and trying to take care of your site. So I have seen this happening. I was in Germany a month back, and suppliers don't even get to touch the data. They are sitting on a 4 gigabit network across the OEM and them. And their full vehicle models are being used and analyzed and completely on the server of the customer. Without any IP coming into and only on the screen, all they can do is screenshot at most. That to printout will happen and customer will be.
Mr. Kulkarni, the second part of the question you so beautifully outlined with that Ashley Madison example about the security concerns. If there is a pull factor which is pushing the SME to make this transition, but at the same time they cannot make those kinds of investments either in terms of money or in terms of manpower, how can SMEs ensure that they meet and tackle these challenges?
See, when the SME, at least in the initial stages, I presume the IP level will be a bit low. And what is crucial for you in the IP, don't keep it there. Because see, that typically in SMEs, only 6% of Indian SMEs have a website. They just don't have a website. So now, if you want to advertise something, you can use social media. I'm not really the usual print media. Apologies to Mr. Venkatesh, but just as an example, you put a ad in the Times of India front page. Might cost you, I don't know, I'm assuming 1 or 2 crores. But for the same few lakhs, you can perhaps attract exactly the relevant customers to your website. So I think so naturally your website has to be on somewhere where it can take, that kind of a traffic. Otherwise, if you see our, sometimes the government websites, including when you want to see the SSLC results, nobody gets to see the results at that point. So the student's patience is tested till about 3 o'clock in the afternoon when nobody is good, and then you come to know the results, because the government hosts it in NIC and it is not a data center, etc., etc. So for a small company, you make small, but your ideas are big. And you have to have the infrastructure like a big company. For example, if you want to do marketing, Salesforce.com. Salesforce.com earlier was very expensive. Even I think 3-4 years ago, it was $125 per month per user. Right now, it is only $25 per month per user because of the cloud. And also they give some free also, because free means certain functionalities are not there. But if that is good enough for you, that is also fine. So I feel that as time passes, we have to be with the cloud, and that would be my recommendation.
While before I go to the probably the next and the final question, just a small 10-second plug for BT. While we are still in the business of printing out dead trees and we come once a fortnight, we have a very up-to-date, continuously live updated website. You can visit us on Business Today too, because Mr. Kulkarni made a point about print versus digital. We have a very active digital property. Please visit us online. We have time only for one more question. So where do I go?
I have the mic.
Okay.
So.
He has the mic. I'm sorry.
I'm Chris Shrikant from Precursor Solutions. My question is a follow-up to a friend's question here, which has been answered. So this is, his experience is with using LMS and probably LS Dynamics for the software, right? So I was in engineering services several years ago. I'm now into a company that's into QA and testing of both software and infrastructure. And this comes from experience in both of these industries. The question is also to understand, and this is something that nobody has touched upon so far. And this is very important from not just his perspective, but a lot of us sitting here, as well as people on the podium. The performance is not the performance of the software. For example, like LMS or LS Dynamics, is under question whether it is even a license-based or seat-based, or if it is on the cloud. Now, my personal experience with LS Dynamics and LMS and other NVH related, or NVH or any other simulation.
No, sorry. What's the question?
Is the software doesn't perform well, even when it is desktop-based. I'm sure Arvind and others might understand this. How do you fix it on the cloud? Even to this day, I'm sure that there are issues with respect to performance. I'm talking runtime and other issues. Now, this is also faced in regular software as well. Even not Salesforce, that's probably the most simplified on the cloud. But how do such heavy software, you know what I mean? How do you simplify this? How do you make the performance better? Infrastructure is not really tweaked to address the performance. And I'm telling you this from personal experience with a lot of global product companies. And this is an issue which has not been addressed. Nobody has talked about performance in the entire session. My question is, are you addressing this at the user level, at the production level? Thank you.
Sure. Mr. Goenka, would you like to have a go on how do you address performance challenges when it's moved to the cloud? And
yes, so first we have to recognize that there are two types of performance challenges. One is a challenge of core compute. The other is the perceived performance due to the additional latency of the interaction that takes place between the user and the software at the back. And ill-engineered software will absolutely give you a reduced performance the moment you move from the desk onto the cloud. And when I use the word ill-engineered, I would put it like this, that it is an engineering problem which first requires to be solved at the fundamental level. And therefore, it is not a statement of porting a software onto the cloud. Because when you port a software to the cloud, you have not taken the fundamentals and re-engineered them. And that is clearly an issue. And at the same time, there is a reverse flip to it, that compute-heavy software, so several examples were taken about compute-heavy software, where you cannot afford the computing power at your premise. And that kind of computing power is far more available on the cloud. So extremely compute-heavy software, but not interface-heavy software, will benefit from moving to the cloud, and you will still get an increased performance. But interaction-heavy software, you will get the complete reverse, because you could have got a far swifter interaction onto the premise because you don't have the additional latency which is getting concerned. So that's not a blanket problem nor a blanket solution. It is a case-by-case engineering problem which requires to be solved well.
Rajesh, before we close, one final word on this. Is this a fundamentally engineering problem or is it a business model problem?
Yeah, I think, see, if you see the core, it makes it easier. As I was saying, it's win-win for everyone. So from a partner perspective, technology partner perspective, if you see, today we started ground up. We took a call to only go with the cloud. Of course, we have a few customers who are on-site also. But again, I think the key is what everybody has been saying, that big capex is not something which an SME can do. Right? They just can't do it. And the benefits, we did an ROI, it came to, on a conservative level for manufacturing companies, it comes to 500% in the first year. You can imagine the ROIs in the next years. Benefits are huge. Right? So the benefits it's clearly out there to see. Now, coming to the question on...
was it a fundamentally engineering issue which needs to be solved?
So if you're ground up cloud, as Bharat is saying, if you're ground up cloud, it's not an engineering issue. From a software vendor perspective, what is the problem today in having multiple installations? Is people go and customize for you and then customize for you and then customize for you. From a vendor perspective, it's almost impossible to manage. You don't have a single code base. So if you see a company like Workday, it's a single code base. Whether I supply that to an on-site or do I supply, I mean, it's something which is used by cloud, it's a single code base. It becomes so much easier for me to manage. So when I get a support call, it's the same thing which everybody's seeing. The customer is seeing the same thing. Now coming to performance. If you look at performance, clearly performance is, of course I'm not talking about network performance is good. And it's not see, ours is also a business critical application. It does quality, it does manufacturing execution. It's a real-time system, so it's business critical. Now, performance, in fact, for us, so it's heavily optimized if it's ground-up cloud, I agree. We've not taken some legacy, so we don't have a legacy, so I can't comment on that. But it's good on performance. The response time is not more than 3 seconds, which is acceptable standards. Right? If you want to scale up, on a cloud, on an on-site, you will need to get an additional CPU and all of that. The time taken, you don't know how long that's going to take. On cloud, it's a second. It takes me 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes. I just get onto an Amazon server. They have burst servers, there are all kinds of servers, I have options. I can just go to the next one. I always can scale very fast, so my customer can never have a performance problem. Right? So that my time to respond is so much faster.
Absolutely. You want to add something, Arvind?
I wanted to add, since I kind of see this as especially for compute intensive software, I see this like a full circle. Back in 97, 98, we used to log into Cray and supercomputer and submit our runs, and we used to charge $75 an hour of computing. And the same LS-DANA software used to run at that time. It was a supercomputer, and today we are talking about the cluster computing, right? Cloud is like a cluster computing equivalent. So it has come a full circle, but the cost of computing has literally gone to zero. And I don't believe the architectures, if the software architecture is good on a offsite, it should not be a problem to be on the cloud also, if the architecture is right. If the architecture is flawed on the desktop version, it's going to have challenges on the, whether it's a cloud or anything. The product like LS-DANA and MS are being optimized, in my view, for both cloud and supercomputer, whatever we can call. And I do believe it's the only way to go in my opinion. Instead of investing hundreds of thousands of dollars on hardware on a local location, better off going to cloud and not to worry about the maintenance of them and obsolescence of the products.
Thank you. Before I hand over
on the holistic solution, on the last question, if you can take.
Okay, one final question. If we can pass the mic to the gentleman, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Manohar from Iceberg Research Center. We're into education, research and consulting. My question is, so far the conversation has been more tilted towards the IT-oriented SMEs. I'm also on the bodies of the industry, SME industry bodies. The question is, we have a large number of SMEs who have not been able to optimize on the available the services, whether it's SaaS or the clouds. As Vivek said a little while ago, only 7% of them are into this. The question is, we have a large number of SMEs in IT sector who are competing for that business of SMEs needs of IT. I mean, IT in SMEs is one thing, IT for SMEs, the other one SMEs in IT. Can we create a platform where we can bring them together? Right now there is no validation, there is no kind of a certifying body which the SMEs can look up. You know, the moment they see, okay, you can go to this SME in the IT sector, you get the fantastic service. There is transaction management, there are a lot of things that are available, but there are a lot of issues in design, client management and so many other issues. My question is that, is there a possibility that we create at an organization level a platform for SMEs in IT and the IT for SMEs?
That's a wonderful suggestion more than a question. Mr. Goenka, you want to have a go?
For the last couple of years, you all may have been hearing about a foundation called ISPIRT, ISPIRT, which is the Indian Software Product Industry Roundtable. And this is one of the specific challenges that have been taken up there, that how do you connect the SME IT to the SMEs through a process which allows both sides to eliminate the trust deficit. So one is to increase awareness and understanding of who's there and who's the customer and who's the supplier, as well as how do you control the trust deficit between them through concepts of certification and concepts. So it is a tough challenge because it's a large country and it's a very diverse country. But it's a process which has been started about 15-18 months ago, and so far we have touched about 85,000 or 90,000 SMEs in the market and connected them to a few hundred vendors. And the process is ongoing. We hope that it will take some momentum and potentially address a little bit of the challenge that you are talking about. But the challenge exists, the trust deficit exists, and it needs to be resolved.
Thank you. Before I hand over the proceedings to Alokesh, okay, please.
No, I thought just to inform him, this MSME Ministry of Government of India, you know that as this defense and aviation, everything comes, the SME should get 30% of the orders. That's the policy of the government. So in that there is also a scheme where both we do rating as well as defense does rating. Then there is a quality control, QCI or something like that it is called. They are also involved, and in that questionnaire there is a substantial, I won't say substantial, but at least 20% component of technology. So I think they are also trying to encourage, and you as a former industry, president of the former FICCI in Karnataka, you should take it up so that all the industries are benefited and they give some funds for them.
Before Alokesh takes over, I wanted to just thank all my panelists for taking time today. Really appreciate you folks being here. A round of applause for them. In case you got some insight, made you think, I'm sure that they have. Thank you so much, sirs, for being here. Alokesh, all yours.
Thanks, Venkatesha. This is the longest I've stood on stage at the end of a panel discussion. It just goes to show how much interest there is, and we could have gone on and on. I'm sure there are many more questions. The gentleman there had raised his hand several times. If you have a short question, we can still take it.
Yes.
Can you give the mic? We are 15 minutes past our time, but we can still take one question.
My name is Manoj and I represent Cubic. We build applications based on Office 365. My question to Mr. Goenka, we are using Tally since 1993, version 4. And I'm really fan of it. It's really a great product. But question comes to you specifically, why it's taking so long to bring this on the cloud? I mean, if I see it's Intuit or QuickBooks, all they are there since quite about 5, 7, 8 years back. So what exactly is stopping you to coming this on the cloud?
I say it's my training, honestly. So the training which I have received from my father is, don't do what is right for your company, do what is right for the customer. And I think the biggest service that we have done for you is not coming to the cloud before we are ready. So there are two problems. So one problem came up about security, and many of us will be having our network installations and we'll be having our own IT infrastructure, and you'll be surprised the way our offices are secured by the lowest paid employee in the company, because he's the person who carries the key. The same way your IT infrastructure is also secured by the lowest paid employee in your company, who will be given the network password, the IT administration password. And when you start trusting your data to us, the problem is not about whether your data will be leaked to someone else. The problem is, will you be able to trust the data for yourself again? Because you don't know if someone has been able to modify the data, and therefore you don't know what information you're looking at and whether it's trustable. And again, to solve that problem while giving diversity and doing it affordably is genuinely taking us longer than we believe we will take. So we have been at it for quite some time, but we have thrown away whatever we have done 3 times now. What we have done in the last 3 years is the only one which has got close to the door of coming out. And the previous efforts that we made, we were not satisfied enough to say that I will allow you as a customer to come on to me. Because unfortunately we have earned the trust of the nation. And I know that the day we tell them that yes, you can take your data and give it to Tally, people will do it. I have to be able to trust my organization to keep that safe. And it's not about trusting me, it is about my being able to trust 700, 800, 900 people in my organization that they don't have the ability to access your data. That's a tougher problem to solve. It's not about someone outside being able to access your data. Someone inside should not be able to access it. And the day we solve the problem, then we'll come to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goenka, and all the other panelists. It was really a great pleasure. I'm sure you have many more questions, and you can discuss them over dinner and cocktails which we have outside. As I said in the beginning, we are thankful to our sponsor, Reliance Commercial Finance, for giving us this opportunity. And of course, the Best SME Awards is on the way. There are some stalls outside which you might want to visit. Meanwhile, one final round of applause for the panelists.